This is Paramedic Services Week, and we wanted to highlight some of the wonderful men and women on the front lines doing this important work. So I'm pleased to welcome to the studio today James and Rachel. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Well, thank you for being here, and for the first time in this interview, I'm going to thank you both for what you do, as well as everybody in the paramedic services in our area. But we're going to talk about you a little bit today, and maybe we could start a little rapid fire and introduce yourself and how long you've been a paramedic, and we'll start with you, James.
All right, my name is James. I've been a paramedic for almost 2 decades now, 17, 18 years. And I guess what got me into it really is, it sounds silly, but when I was in high school, I wanted to do a job that they made movies out of because that seemed interesting, and I wanted to be the person where everybody ran one way away from something, I ran towards it. So that's what kind of sparked my interest in getting involved.
Wonderful. Rachel?
I've been a paramedic now with the service for almost 3 years, and then I worked 2 years before that in the service, but not as a paramedic, in a different role. I don't know why I wanted to be a medic. I wanted to be a teacher for as long as I can remember, and then all of a sudden, my mind just changed, did not want to be a teacher anymore. And I like the diversity of paramedics that it's always a different call, you're always going different places, and that's why I chose it.
Excellent. So talk to me a little bit about that, maybe the variety in your day. Take me through a typical day for Rachel.
Like James and I are partners, so we start off their shift, we check off our truck, get ready, get a briefing from our commander, put all our equipment in the truck for the day, that's like personal to us. And then we start off the day, our dispatch tells us where we need to go, whether we're staying in Cornwall or going into the counties of SDG. And then never know where we're going to go from there, and just kind of take every day, see what it gives us.
Absolutely, and maybe I could get you, James, to follow up on that, because it is shared services within. You service the city of Cornwall as well as the counties. It's quite the wide area that you guys serve.
Absolutely. I mean, I live in the counties, and a lot of us do, and some of us live outside of town and stuff like that. So really, just touching on what Rachel said and following up with it, it's one of those jobs that keeps you interested because it's never the same thing. You go out into the day, it begins the same and sometimes ends the same, but in the middle, it's just whatever you want it to be. You can go out there and do a bunch of calls in a day and then really, really be busy and worked off your feet. And other days, you're kind of just cruising around, just trying to make sure that everybody's safe out there, and then help out your other paramedics if they need a hand, or go back to the office and help with whatever you can do. It's a catch-all. It's not one of those regular jobs where you know what your life is going to be from Monday to Friday. For us, we show up and it's whatever life gives you, and you just deal with it and learn how to adapt.
Absolutely, and it must be at times very rewarding. Obviously, you're meeting people in some pretty diverse circumstances, but often some very traumatic experiences. Talk to me, though, about just what it means to you to know that you're helping someone through these crucial times.
Do you want to go first, or would you like to?
I think it's just not many people get to experience helping people in those times of need, and everyone has a different definition of an emergency. So what's an emergency to one person isn't to another. So you kind of treat everything with the same respect and everything, and then obviously it takes a different toll on every medic as well and every person involved. And I'm a new member, but you are part of the peer support team, and I'm a new member of it as well. So that's to help our own medics as well.
Mm-hmm. I think for me, just the diversification of it, the one thing that's a constant though, is that anybody who meets us, anybody who calls that 911 and meets us, they're meeting us at the worst point in their life in most cases, in all cases really. So the one thing we have to remember is that interaction, we have to try and make it as positive as we can for them. So I think that's really what drives us most, is when we meet someone in their worst situation, we want them to come away saying or feeling like they were listened to and got the help that they needed in a bad scene.
Absolutely, and Rachel mentioned that you're both members of the peer support group, James for a little bit longer. So talk to me a little bit about that. We know the importance of keeping mental health on the front lines, and obviously you mentioned you're meeting people in their worst circumstances. That takes a toll on the paramedics as well. Talk to me about the peer support group, but also how you compartmentalize and sort of leave the job at home and deal with some of those feelings and issues that arise.
Peer support team is near and dear to my heart. I was around when it was constructed and created. From the beginning, it was paramedic driven. Paramedics created that for other paramedics mainly. and it's to take care of our own mental wellness. Like I said before, the situations we walk into are always going to be the worst for everybody. The one common denominator for everybody's worst situation is the paramedic is there. So a couple of us sat down and realized that we had to do something for our own members to make sure we can stay sane, stay healthy, and stay productive so we can go out and keep helping. So the peer support team was created to help paramedics, logistics, and management within ourselves and within the city. Anybody who wants access to it will help them. We were on 24/7. It's a 100% volunteer system, and the mental health side of things has really come to light recently. I mean, I've been in emergency services since I was 16 years old. I've done a variety of different emergency services jobs. And this is the first time I've been part of something that really wanted to help the helper. And it's really, because I'm one of the older members, it's through people like Rachel that are really keeping it going and keeping it active and productive and growing that we really rely on now. So I'm thankful very much to the younger members like Rachel for keeping that going.
Oh, that's excellent. And Rachel, of course, we mentioned you've been on the job for 3 years, so that means that 2 of those years were certainly much different than you probably would have expected going into the job. But I'd like to get both of your thoughts, but we'll start with you, Rachel, just on the pandemic and how that's affected your role and your job as well.
So there's definitely like a huge learning curve from school onto the road, no matter when it was that you started. Just a huge difference between those two things. I had a little bit of pre-COVID time on the road, so it was nice to experience that. But a lot of new people, COVID's all they know, so that's kind of a game changer as well. And then just with all the protocols, extra measures to keep us safe, the PPE, the screenings, it's definitely been a huge learning curve for all of us to implement that, and the changing of service policies, provincial and federal policies, that all keeps changing. We stepped up, we helped with vaccinations, we've helped with COVID swabbing, just a bunch of other avenues that we weren't part of paramedicine before, but we've kind of branched out to help the health unit and help hospitals and everything like that.
Absolutely. James, anything to add to that?
It was just an evolution, really. I mean, prior to, we were always gowned up for certain things and masked for certain things. This just really amped it up a notch, where everything was gowned and masked and gloved, and pretty much wearing a garbage bag when it's 40 degrees out and you're trying to pull somebody out of a house or something like that makes everything more difficult. That and the fact that we're not impervious to this stuff, so we've had a lot of members go down sick and get COVID and spend a lot of their own sick time taking off work, where they're isolated from their family and they're running out of time for vacation and stuff like that at work. Makes everything more difficult, right? But the one thing that paramedics all keep in mind is that this is the important thing to do, and it's the right thing to do. So if you ask, we'll complain, but usually we wouldn't.
Oh, that's excellent. And again, yeah, we're so lucky to have the men and women that we do working in the paramedic services. So talk to me a little bit, finally, just what, it's something we probably take for granted, right? Unless we need it, we're not necessarily thinking of it. But if you wanted to leave our viewers with something top of mind about the work that you do, what would that be? And maybe we'll start with you, James.
Sure. For me, I think the number one thing I'd like the listeners to really understand and is one of those things that everybody, it's ubiquitous, right? There's fire, ambulance, and police, and they're all an essential service. There's a harsh reality that police and fire are an essential service, and your paramedics are not considered an essential service. So I think that's one thing I'd like people to take away from that is when we're out there doing our job 24/7, we're not held at the same regard, and that's something that I think needs to be addressed.
Absolutely. Rachel, any final thoughts?
Obviously what James has said, and then also, during COVID, we've had a lot of issues with a lot of people overdosing and stuff like that. It was really bad at the beginning of COVID, and a lot of education was put out, I think, through the health unit and everything about that, but still, mental health is it's an important thing too, and it's, like we touched on, it's getting more and more talked about now, which is great, and hopefully that momentum keeps going. But you're still going to have the same medical calls, all that, and that doesn't change, and paramedics, we're still here to help with that.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So again, I said at the beginning of the interview, but I want to finish off with it as well. Thank you so much for what you guys do for the community. But again, that extends to everybody that you work with in paramedic services. We can't thank you enough for coming to work every day and doing the job you do for us. So thank you once again. Thank you for joining us. Happy Paramedic Services Week, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.